Imagine an aircraft that never stops to refuel, never plugs into a charger, never burns a drop of fossil fuel, yet keeps climbing, keeps cruising, keeps flying, powered by something that, until recently, scientists insisted was impossible. Today, for the first time, we uncover the RF engine behind Maxwell Chikumbutso's self-powered aircraft, technology so disruptive that even engineers inside major aerospace agencies reportedly refused to believe it until they saw the data. But this story doesn't begin in a high-tech lab. It begins in a quiet workshop in Zimbabwe, where a man with no formal engineering degree started asking questions global institutions never dared to ask. Like, what if energy doesn't have to be stored? What if it can be captured? What if the air around us is already a power grid, waiting to be turned on? Maxwell's aircraft wasn't built on traditional physics. It was built on a concept the world consistently dismissed: ambient radio frequency energy extraction. The idea that electromagnetic fields around us can be harvested, condensed, amplified, and converted into usable propulsion. And when Maxwell integrated this into an aircraft frame, even his closest supporters didn't expect what happened next. The moment the prototype powered up, the instruments began registering something strange. Voltage climbing without input, systems stabilizing without an external source. And then a lift. Not from fuel, not from solar, but from the RF engine. A device that doesn't just collect energy, it creates a loop, a continuously self-feeding system. And this loop is what aviation experts fear the most. Because if Maxwell is right, jet fuel becomes obsolete. Charging stations become irrelevant. And every rule of aviation economics collapses overnight. But to understand why this engine works, you need to know the secret inside it, what Maxwell calls frequency harmonics alignment. This is the part scientists refuse to touch. This is the reason his patents were blocked, delayed, or quietly buried. And this is the part we're going to break down next. Before the world tried to silence it, before the aircraft began its unauthorized test flights, before the governments who once mocked it suddenly became very interested, Maxwell demonstrated something remarkable. RF waves aren't just signals. They're energy that can be captured like wind in a turbine. Maxwell's RF engine uses layered coils tuned to multiple frequencies that exist everywhere, from communication towers, satellites, natural resonance, even cosmic background radiation. Instead of letting that energy dissipate, the aircraft absorbs it, converts it, and feeds it back into its propulsion system. And when this feedback loop becomes stable, the aircraft becomes something the aviation world has never seen. A machine that powers itself. This is where everything changes. Because after the aircraft lifted for the first time, after climbing beyond the range of traditional fuel-based crafts, something unexpected happened. A defense agency from a major Western superpower sent an unofficial inquiry. Not through the press. Not through the government.
Direct.
Private. Urgent. They wanted to know one thing. How is this aircraft generating power without fuel? What happened after that inquiry is the part of the story I'll reveal next.
Just tell me.
The inquiry didn't come with a signature. No official seal. Just a single encrypted message routed through a private server. Provide data logs from the last flight test. We are prepared to compensate. Maxwell didn't respond. And for a moment, everything went quiet until 2 days later, a second message arrived. This time less polite, more precise. We know the aircraft sustained altitude for 83 minutes without fuel. We need to understand the mechanism. That number wasn't public, which meant someone had been watching. Maxwell's team traced the signal. It was coming from an intelligence subcontractor known for energy surveillance, one that specialized in monitoring irregular power signatures around the world. They detected something during Maxwell's test flight, something that wasn't supposed to be possible. Because when the RF engine activates, it produces a very unusual electromagnetic footprint, almost like a ripple across multiple frequencies. Not a spike, not noise, a pattern, a repeating signature. It's that signature that caught their attention. To intelligence analysts, it looked like a power plant in the sky, an airborne generator creating energy without any known fuel source. That's when the real problem began. Because once one agency noticed, others followed. During the next test flight, Maxwell's team observed drones circling far above the aircraft's altitude ceiling, too high to be civilian, too quiet to be commercial. They weren't filming. They were scanning. The RF engine confused their sensors. Most aircraft leave behind predictable signals: radar bounce, engine noise, thermal output. Maxwell's aircraft didn't. Its thermal signature was almost zero. No exhaust. No heat plume. Just a faint electromagnetic glow, like a humming orbit of invisible energy wrapped around the craft. And that glow changed everything. Because agencies weren't just curious anymore. They were alarmed. A vehicle that creates its own energy is a marvel. But a vehicle that hides its thermal and acoustic footprint while flying? That's a strategic threat. And so, 4 days after the drone incident, a team Maxwell had never seen before arrived at his workshop. Not in suits. Not in uniforms. Casual clothing. Official nothing. They didn't introduce themselves. They simply said, "We need to understand your RF engine. You don't know what you've built." Maxwell looked at them and replied calmly, "I know exactly what I've built. The question is, why does it scare you?" The room froze. One of the visitors stepped forward, opened a tablet, and displayed a classified satellite scan. On it was Maxwell's aircraft mid-flight. But the aircraft wasn't the focus. The scan showed a field around the craft, a shimmering sphere of distorted space. Not visually distorted, electromagnetically distorted. The official tapped the screen. This shouldn't exist. Fields like this require more power than the aircraft could ever carry. So where is it coming from? Maxwell didn't answer. Not because he didn't know, but because he knew exactly what they wanted.
Control.
Ownership. Patent rights.
Monopoly.
But what he said next set off a chain reaction that none of them expected. "I didn't build this to hide energy. I built it because Africa was tired of asking permission." The officials exchanged looks, uneasy, calculating. This wasn't a small lab invention anymore. It was geopolitical. It was disruptive. It was uncontrollable. And it was already flying. What those officials didn't know, however, was that Maxwell wasn't working alone anymore. A private coalition, scientists, investors, and aviation engineers from 3 different African nations had quietly joined forces to expand the project. Their goal wasn't to build a single aircraft. Their goal was to build a fleet. A fleet of self-powered aircraft that could move goods, medicine, people, and resources across the continent without spending a cent on fuel. A fleet that could operate without airports, without supply chains, without foreign dependency. And that fleet was about to run its first synchronized test flight. If successful, it would mark the moment Africa officially entered the era of ultra-cheap, self-sustaining aviation, leaping past infrastructure that took the West 80 years to build. But the first test of this multi-craft formation wasn't smooth. Something happened mid-flight that no one expected. Something the sensors picked up long before the pilots felt it. Something tied directly to the RF engine and its unknown effects. To continue the story from this moment, just say, the formation took off at dawn, 3 prototypes rising quietly through the early morning haze, their RF engines humming like distant thunder. On the ground, Maxwell and his team monitored every data stream in real time. Voltage stability, harmonic alignment, field resonance, everything looked perfect. Until it didn't. At 4,000 feet, the sensors detected a strange fluctuation, something Maxwell had never seen before. Not a failure. Not a drop. A surge. Field strength around the aircraft suddenly doubled, then tripled. The pilots reported nothing unusual. The aircraft felt stable, smooth, almost too smooth. But the instruments on the ground told a different story. The electromagnetic bubble around each aircraft was starting to expand, merging into a larger, unified field. This wasn't supposed to happen. The RF engines were designed to operate independently, each generating its own self-sustaining loop. But now, the fields were synchronizing across distances of nearly 2 kilometers. Maxwell stared at the numbers. Impossible, one engineer whispered. Unless they're forming a network. Maxwell's eyes widened. A network. 3 self-powered aircraft unintentionally linking their energy fields, creating a shared, amplified power zone around the entire formation. If the field continued to grow, it could create turbulence, destabilize electronics, or worse, trigger a resonance feedback loop. Maxwell grabbed the comms headset. Bring altitude down to 3,000. Reduce harmonic frequency by 15%.
Keep distance.
Do not let the fields overlap. But it was too late. The merged field reached critical alignment. For a brief moment, everything went silent. The aircraft stopped consuming power. Stopped generating power. They simply floated, suspended in an invisible cushion of electromagnetic pressure. The pilots panicked. Maxwell, the controls, they're not responding. It's like the plane is holding itself in place. Ground sensors went wild. The unified field had stabilized by itself. Maxwell took a slow breath. He understood something none of his engineers had noticed yet. The energy field isn't destabilizing, he said quietly. It's supporting them. One engineer shook his head in disbelief. You're telling us the aircraft are flying on the field alone? No engine output. Maxwell nodded. They're not just harvesting ambient energy anymore. They've created a shared reservoir. A reservoir of free-floating electromagnetic pressure, one that could theoretically support massive loads, enormous distances, and extreme durations. If this could be controlled, it wouldn't just change aviation. It would change infrastructure, transportation, logistics, even defense. But before anyone could process the implications, one of the aircraft drifted too close to the others. Just a few meters. The shared field spiked, shooting upward in a massive pulse. Satellites detected it instantly. Within minutes, alert systems were triggered in 3 separate countries. Not because of danger, but because the energy reading matched one thing: an unexplained airborne power surge originating from African airspace. Agencies that had been monitoring Maxwell for months suddenly went into full alert. Messages started pouring into encrypted networks. What is happening over Zimbabwe? Is this a weapons test? Has Maxwell activated a new device? But the real shock came moments later, when a high-ranking official from a European aerospace agency contacted Maxwell directly. No threats. No demands. Just a single sentence. We need to talk. Immediately. This technology is beyond anything we've seen. Maxwell didn't respond. His focus was still on the formation, still suspended, still stable, still floating in a way physics didn't fully explain. But then something happened on the ground. A 4th aircraft, one not prepared for flight today, began vibrating. Its coils activated on their own. The merged field was pulling it in. Maxwell froze. The technology had begun linking with systems it wasn't even connected to. Something fundamental had changed. Something the world wasn't ready for. The 4th aircraft shook harder, its RF coils humming even though no power had been supplied. The engineers stared in disbelief as the craft's onboard systems flickered to life, one after another, without anyone touching a switch. Maxwell rushed toward it, placing his hand on the fuselage. It was vibrating, not violently but rhythmically, almost like it was responding to a signal only it could hear. The merged electromagnetic field in the sky wasn't just powering the aircraft already in flight. It was reaching out, linking, activating any device tuned to its harmonic structure. Shut down the coils, Maxwell shouted. One engineer scrambled to the control panel and cut the breakers. The aircraft kept vibrating. He cut the secondary breakers. No effect. Maxwell stepped back, eyes narrowing. It's not drawing power from the workshop, he said. It's drawing it from the field. The realization hit everyone at the same time. The field had become self-expanding. It was behaving less like a power bubble and more like a living, resonant system. If it kept growing, it could start interacting with other RF devices across a wide radius, communication towers, grids, even satellites. Not destructively, but synchronously, in harmony. Which, depending on who you asked, was either revolutionary or dangerous. Back in the sky, the 3 aircraft remained suspended in perfect geometric formation, as if held by invisible strings. The pilots' voices trembled through the comms. Maxwell, we're not falling. But we're not flying either. It feels like the aircraft weighs nothing. Maxwell took a breath. The next decision could define the future of the entire technology. If he reduced the harmonic frequency further, the field might collapse, dropping all 3 aircraft instantly. If he stabilized it, the field could grow stronger, more autonomous, more unpredictable. And if he activated the 4th aircraft manually, the field might pull it upward into the formation, creating a 4-point harmonic grid, a structure the world had never seen. Maxwell, one engineer whispered, if we lose control of this, we don't know what happens next. Maxwell didn't answer. His eyes remained fixed on the data stream. Then he noticed something extraordinary. The field was not random. It was following a pattern, an arrangement of harmonic intervals identical to those found in natural resonance systems. Earth's ionosphere, Schumann frequencies, even deep space electromagnetic echoes. This wasn't chaos. It was alignment, a convergence, something no engine, no generator, no aircraft had ever produced. Maxwell finally spoke. This is why they were afraid. Not because the aircraft can fly without fuel, but because the energy field organizes itself. A self-organizing energy system. A closed-loop, wireless, scalable power network generated in midair by synchronized RF engines. The implications were staggering. Power grids without wires. Transportation without fuel. Infrastructure without dependence. Energy flowing like signals, broadcast, shared, amplified. And just as Maxwell began to stabilize the field, a new alert flashed across the monitors. An unauthorized aircraft had entered the airspace, approaching fast. High altitude. Stealth profile. Military grade. It wasn't there to observe. It was there to intervene. The team froze. The intruding aircraft slowed, hovering at a distance. Then the ground radar captured something chilling. It was locking onto the formation. Not with weapons, but with a scanning array powerful enough to map every harmonic detail of the energy field. They weren't watching anymore. They were trying to copy it. Maxwell clenched his jaw. They came to steal the signature. The merged field pulsed. The 3 aircraft drifted slightly, as if aware of the intruder's presence. And the 4th aircraft, still shaking, began lifting 1 inch off the ground. If you want me to continue the story from this exact moment, just say. The 4th aircraft hovered a few centimeters above the floor, just enough to silence the room. No engines, no thrust, no propellers, only the resonant pull of the expanding RF field outside. One engineer whispered, "It's synchronizing, even without activation." Maxwell stepped backward, eyes wide but focused. He looked at the monitors showing the intruding military aircraft. Its scanning array intensified, thin beams of invisible electromagnetic pulses probing the sky like fingers searching for a pulse. Maxwell, the pilot in Aircraft 1, called out, "They're trying to decode the field's harmonics. They're mapping our frequencies." Maxwell exhaled sharply. He knew exactly what that meant. If the intruder captured the harmonic signature, they could reproduce the field anywhere, weaponize it, suppress it, or steal the entire technology overnight. And whoever controlled it, controlled the future of energy. The 4th aircraft rose another inch. Loose tools slid across the floor toward it as the field gently magnetized the space. "We have to break the scan," Maxwell said. "If they complete the harmonic sweep, it's over." The room erupted.
How?
"The field's too large to mask. If we destabilize it, the aircraft will fall. They'll take the signature in 30 seconds. Maxwell raised a hand. "We boost the harmonic." The room went dead silent. Boosting the harmonic would deepen the field's resonance, effectively turning the sky into a massive RF echo chamber. It would scramble the intruder's scan, but it would also amplify the field's force dramatically, meaning the 3 aircraft in the air could be pulled higher, further, maybe even into uncontrollable altitude. Maxwell, the pilot in Aircraft 3, whispered, "Are you sure?" "No," Maxwell said softly. "But if they steal the signature, the world loses this technology forever." He pressed the harmonic boost. The field roared. Invisible waves rippled through the sky like a stone dropped into a cosmic lake. The three suspended aircraft shuddered, then stabilized, but their altitude increased slightly as though lifted by a giant unseen hand. The intruding aircraft reeled back, its scanning array flickering from interference. Its engines fired harder, struggling to fight the turbulence created by the boosted harmonic. Inside the workshop, the fourth aircraft rose a full meter off the ground. And then, something unexpected happened. The intruder scanners, overwhelmed by the boosted harmonic, didn't just fail. They reflected. A backscatter glitch. A feedback loop of their own making. The scanning beam rebounded into the intruder's fuselage, scrambling its internal systems. Alarms blared. Its stealth field flickered. Its altitude dipped, hard. Maxwell, one engineer gasped. Their own scan is destabilizing them. The intruder descended, spiraling slightly, engines sputtering as its avionics tried to recover. It wasn't crashing, but it had lost control. Then, in a stunning twist, the three airborne RF aircraft reacted. They rotated in unison, still hands-free, still engine-free, aligning themselves between the intruder and the energy field. Like guardians. Like sentinels. As if the field itself positioned them deliberately. Maxwell, the pilot of Aircraft 2, said slowly, "We didn't do that." The aircraft were acting coordinated. Not autonomously, but resonantly. Maxwell stared at the formation, the perfect geometry, the synchronized spacing, the silent intelligence in their movements. "It's the field," he whispered. "It's guiding them." The intruder retreated, engines roaring as it escaped the harmonic turbulence, disappearing into cloud cover. Silence returned. But the fourth aircraft kept rising, now 2 meters up 3. Maxwell realized something profound. The field wasn't just enabling flight. It was evolving, adapting, becoming something new. The pilots held their breath. The engineers stared. The world outside waited. Maxwell stepped forward, eyes locked on the levitating aircraft, and whispered, "We're no longer testing the technology. The technology is beginning to test us." If you want the story to continue from this exact moment, say. A faint vibration filled the room, soft at first, then rising into a deep harmonic hum that resonated through the walls, the floor, the air itself. The fourth aircraft's fuselage glowed with a subtle bluish sheen, as though the RF field was threading itself through the metal at a molecular level. "Maxwell, the field density is increasing," an engineer said, voice trembling. "It's not just lifting the craft, it's interacting with it." Maxwell's eyes narrowed. The aircraft rotated gently, perfectly smooth, defying every known principle of inertia. Each movement looked less like machinery and more like choreography, precise, intentional, almost aware. The pilots watched with silent awe. "This is new," Maxwell murmured. "It's never done this before." The aircraft pitched upward, pointing toward the ceiling, then shifted again, as if scanning its surroundings. Telemetry screens flickered, with symbols no one in the room recognized. "What is that?" "New data." "It's generating patterns. Are those frequencies?" The symbols pulsed in rhythmic sequences. One engineer leaned closer to a monitor and whispered, "It's communicating." The room froze. Maxwell stepped closer, studying the patterns. They weren't random. They were harmonic groupings, clusters of frequency signatures that shifted in response to the aircraft's movement. "It's mapping the environment," Maxwell said, "like it's trying to understand the space around it." A sudden spike in the readings made several screens flash red. The fourth aircraft surged upward another half-meter. The lights dimmed. Loose metal objects rattled across the floor. One pilot cursed. "Maxwell, if it keeps rising, it could breach the roof." Maxwell didn't respond. His attention was locked onto the aircraft, and the fact that its movements were becoming more deliberate, more controlled. Yet no one was controlling it. Then, the three aircraft outside responded. The formation shifted. They tilted simultaneously, aligning themselves with the fourth aircraft's vertical pitch. Their altitude increased in small increments, each change in perfect synchronization. Maxwell, the lead pilot, whispered over comms, "The fleet is mirroring it." Another tremor shook the facility. Not dangerous, just powerful, like standing next to the heartbeat of a giant. Suddenly, the fourth aircraft emitted a soft pulse, barely visible, like a ripple of distortion. The pulse hit the walls, then echoed outward, passing through the entire building. Every monitor flickered. For one brief moment, each screen showed the same thing. A holographic outline of a spherical grid, huge, complex, rotating slowly. A lattice of frequencies. Interlocking. Expanding.
Precise.
What is that?" someone whispered. Maxwell stared, his mind racing. "That," he said slowly, breath unsteady, "is a field map." "A map of what?" Maxwell swallowed. "A map of the atmosphere. Of the ionosphere. Of how the field can shape airspace." The engineers stared in shock. "It's showing us how to scale the technology," Maxwell continued. "How to blanket an entire region with RF lift. Not for one aircraft, for dozens, hundreds." Another pulse rippled. The map expanded. Now it showed not just atmospheric layers, but something deeper. Lines.
Nodes.
Paths of resonance, connecting points across the continent, like an invisible backbone stretching through the sky. The pilots went silent. "Maxwell, is that?" "It can't be." Maxwell stepped forward, voice barely above a whisper. "It's showing us a network. An RF network. Large enough to create a continent-wide self-powered flight corridor." The aircraft pulsed again, stronger. The map expanded even further. Now it showed something no one expected. Shapes. Objects. Other aircraft. But not their aircraft. Unfamiliar silhouettes. Triangular. Sleek. Silent. Craft that did not yet exist, at least not publicly. Maxwell's eyes widened. "It's showing us future designs." A cold realization washed over the room. Whatever was happening, the technology wasn't just evolving. It was predicting, anticipating, preparing. Maxwell slowly turned toward his team. "This isn't just propulsion," he said. "This is an intelligence. A harmonic intelligence." The harmonic vibration deepened, filling the room with a resonance that felt almost alive. Maxwell stepped toward the hovering craft, stopping only when the air around it thickened with a strange pressure, gentle, but undeniable. The floating aircraft lowered itself slightly, as though acknowledging him. One of the engineers whispered, "Is it responding to you?" Maxwell shook his head slowly.
"No."
"Not to me. To the field we created together." The holographic atmospheric map, rotating on the screens, shifted one last time, aligning itself into a final, stabilized formation, no longer expanding, no longer predicting. It had settled, defined, complete. A blueprint, a vision. Maxwell took a deep breath, eyes locked on the glowing aircraft. "We've crossed a line," he said quietly. "We started by trying to power an aircraft."
His voice steadied.
"But we've awakened a system that wants to show us what's possible." The pilots outside watched their craft realign into their original formation, each one returning to perfect equilibrium, as if waiting for further instruction. One engineer leaned back in disbelief. "Maxwell, do you realize what this means?" He nodded. "It means Africa is no longer following aerospace technology." He looked back at the map, at the lattice of frequencies and flight paths stretching across a digital horizon. "We're leading it." The fourth aircraft slowly descended, landing with near-silent grace. The vibration faded. The lights brightened. The room fell into stunned silence. Maxwell placed a hand on the craft's hull, warm, faintly humming, like the heartbeat of something newly born. "This was the test," he whispered. "The world will see the rest soon." As the hangar doors opened and sunlight poured in, the three aircraft outside rose into the sky, smooth, steady, effortless, taking formation above the facility. A new era wasn't coming. It had already begun.